Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't.
Has anyone ever said to you, "Wow, you are too sensitive"? Or do you know someone who seems very sensitive? I'm guessing the answer to at least one of these questions is yes, because it turns out that approximately 20% of the human population is highly sensitive. As you'll hear, high sensitivity is not a pathology, but rather a function that helped our human tribes survive in the not-so-distant past. The sensitive people of these tribes could hear, smell, or otherwise perceive danger far faster than those who were less sensitive. Another interesting finding is this: the trait of high sensitivity exists in nearly all species and at the same incidence of about 20% regardless of the species. I'm so excited. You will get to learn from my guest, psychotherapist and educator, Alane Freund. Alane is a therapist in private practice, and she gives talks all over the world on highly sensitive people, also known as HSPs. Also, you'll hear the term highly sensitive person, or HSP for short, may be a regrettable term, as Alane prefers people with finely tuned nervous systems. Having a finely tuned nervous system myself, I agree. Alane shares incredibly useful information for people who identify as HSPs, as well as people who love them. So listen in as Alane and I talk about highly sensitive people. Alane Freund, welcome to Super Psyched.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I love your work, and it's changed my life, actually. It really explains how a person like me might not have responded to the world quite the way somebody more robust, as you refer to us as orchids versus, say, dandelions. Sadly, for me, I shouldn't say sadly, but it was painful at the time, at least. I was an unidentified orchid and couldn't quite figure out why it was that things kind of got to me and why stimuli really had so much meaning, where other people would be thinking, really, it means that much to you? Wow, you're so sensitive. And it sounds like you came into this work through a similar process.
Absolutely. I mean, you always say I've been highly sensitive for 6 decades, and I've only been a mental health care person for 3 decades, but I've been highly sensitive all that time. And I have been told my entire life, I can't think of a time, even pre-verbal memory, when I wasn't told I was too sensitive. It's hard on parents to have sensitive, reactive little babies and small children. So we grow up with a really clear message that we're not quite what was expected.
Totally. And one of the things that's amazing about this is the first time I heard about highly sensitive people, I was thinking, oh gosh, really? Now we're going to go down that route? I mean, we're going to now classify that as a thing? And then when I started geeking out to it and realizing, oh my gosh, I mean, there are really strong interspecies implications in that this exists throughout the animal kingdom and even possibly in bacterium. Like 20% is what you cited. Is that correct? Can you speak about that?
Yeah, it's a genetic imperative that a small minority, larger, if it was any smaller, then it might be a disorder, but it's such a large minority that it is actually a trait. And that's sort of the difference between being an illness or a disability or an impairment. It's actually a trait. And like you say, it's been documented in over 100 species. The thinking by the scientists is that it's in every species, as you mentioned. And I don't know about plants, certainly animal species. Some plants are certainly more sensitive to their environment. That's how we got the name orchid from the Swedish behavioral psychologists. But we're talking about, even of the orchids of each species, 15 to 20, maybe even more, depending on how you define this sensitivity. Is it sensitivity? Michael Plewis has been defining lately environmental sensitivity, which is a sensitivity to your environment. I identify sensory processing sensitivity, which is a scientific name for the trait of highly sensitive people. all of which I find to be regrettable languaging, frankly. But if we're just in a logical framework, we'll go ahead and use the language. That includes a little bit more than just environmental sensitivity. So there's a little, maybe 30% of people are highly sensitive to their environment, but then about half of those people are truly highly sensitive in all ways. So 15 to 20% of every species. Why? Because if everybody had this trait, there wouldn't be an advantage. But certainly, we need at least 1 in 5 to think deeply about the implications of our actions. We say there's 2 strategies. And I think the science is so important that I put it on my highly sensitive people part of my website, the highly sensitive people page. It's put right there, which is the first strategy is do it right and do it once. That's us. Like we're more reflective. We think maybe a little too long. We have empathy in our emotional reactions to everything that we're thinking. We notice the subtleties and eventually we make a decision, but by golly, we make the right decision. And then the other strategy that has the majority of people have, thank goodness, is go for it. If you get it wrong, you can always do it again. We need 80% strategy. We never get this done, right? I mean, it'd be okay if we were all in monasteries and had our needs taken care of, or we were the shamans out in our shaman hut. And we could all be that way. But then who is going to go out and harvest the food?
I think of humankind as being an orchestra, and we need percussionists, we need brass players, we need strings, we need the whole thing and the woodwinds. And you speak so beautifully to the fact that we exist, the sensitive ones, for the protection of the species. So I was wondering if you could help the listener recognize and turn this notion of sensitivity on its head from a vulnerability to a strength, kind of the way Susan Cain did with introversion when she wrote Quiet. I was wondering if you could share the strengths of the highly sensitive person. Why is it that maybe the highly sensitive person might deserve a cape?
Yeah, I love the cape image. And I think part of the reason is that we mostly are told as young people, as children, that there's something wrong with it. And so we have to develop all these wild survival skills to make it through childhood. But now here we are. You and I were both pretty high functioning, highly sensitive people. Yep. So we can demonstrate the strengths. Let's start with the languaging. As I said, I find it a little regrettable. Even Elaine finds it a little regrettable. It just took off. And what are you going to do? So here we are now from the mid 90s, mid 2020s, and we've been living with this language. I like to say we have finely tuned nervous systems.
Yes.
How is it not a benefit to have a finely tuned nervous system, to be so aware of what's going on in our environment? And I also like to say we have more reactive brains, and that's absolutely documented with functional MRI studies. Parts of our brains are more reactive than the majority. And that's, you can know. Before I go any further, let me just say, if you feel like you're highly sensitive, whether you have the trait or not, it doesn't matter to me. What matters is that you take care of yourself, that you use your life in such a way that you can thrive, whatever causes you to have some exquisite sensitivity. The problem, the difference is if you have a diagnosis that's causing your sensitivity that could be treated, then you should seek treatment. But if you just have this trait of high sensitivity, it's not a diagnosis. It doesn't need any treatment. It's a strength. The only reason it feels like it's not is because we're trying to navigate a world that's designed by and for people who don't have it. So, what's the strength? I always say what's good for the highly sensitive child is good for all the children. The strength is that you're the person who notices that there's something off. I'm not very good at this because my empathy is so high that I assume the best of everybody. But highly sensitive people are the ones who can ferret out when there's something that's not true going on. We're the ones who notice the subtleties. So it can be as simple as just changing the angle of the blinds so the sun's not in somebody's eyes, or noticing how to make the environment better for everybody, to actually saying to the leader, if we take this action, there will be a reaction that will be detrimental to the entire community. And in earlier evolutionary times, it might be saying, if we go slaughter the women and children in that area, in that tribe, those people will come back and slaughter ours, and we will make a generations long enemy. It's the highly sensitive person who's the advisor to the chief or the king or queen or the people in power, the Pentagon. We are the people who have the foresight, the deep knowledge. It's not a psychic ability. Some people might have those. I don't speak to that because I only speak to what's in the science. So we better leaders. A highly sensitive person is looking at the big picture and all the minute details in the big picture. And people without this kind of brain, they just can't do it. We even have more brain reaction when we see emotional content. Now, you remember how at the end of Ellen DeGeneres' show, she always said, be kind to one another.
Yeah.
Most people need that message. Highly sensitive people don't need it. We are the kind people. We actually need the message, be kind to yourself, because we're so busy being kind to others. But we're the emotional leaders. And emotional leadership, I think, is the most important strength of a highly sensitive person. We have to have it. And we're the ones who can change the world. Now, at my age, at your age, we probably were raised in such a way that our parents didn't go, gosh, I love the way you think about everything for 45 minutes before you can take action. And I love your strong feelings and the way you're screaming and crying one moment and giggling with joy the next. And I just love the way you notice every little thing. Probably we weren't honored for our sensitivity, at least not in US, Canada, probably UK, Australia, most English speaking countries and some non-English speaking countries, but this sort of Western society. Now, who is not the highly sensitive person? What are their strengths? You know who they are? I just did a masterclass on immigrant families as one of the populations we were talking about. What does it take to immigrate? You might need your sensitive person in the family to say, this is intolerable and we have to have something better. But you need the 80% to have the go for it. If you get it wrong, you'll do it again, to make that move, whether to flee the bad or to go in search of the new potential. And guess what? This country that you and I live in, we are people we come from immigrants who had that sword out in front, guns a-blazing, and we came in and slaughtered the indigenous people. Maybe a higher percentage of them were even highly sensitive. Certainly more indigenous cultures value their highly sensitive people. They're medicine people, they're shamans, they're, Elaine Aron called it in the book, priestly advisors. That society that we live in, it needs us so much to maybe skew the balance back in the right direction.
So interesting. It seems like there are cultural considerations for this trait. And you were describing the fact that our country is built on the dandelion principles, but the people who may have inhabited it previously were probably trending more towards the orchids and more towards the introspective. And you were talking about your son who's a Buddhist, and that there are many countries in the world where this is a far more celebrated trait than it might be here at home.
And I think those countries, maybe it's not even those countries, those pockets of society in all countries are people who are more connected to their indigenous roots, older cultures. In the US, in Canada, we are now predominantly a very young people, a very young society. And so we have to be the second strategy with our swords out. Go for it, people. And so we have come to devalue. We still have the 20% that are highly sensitive, or whatever the number is. We still have the minority who are highly sensitive, who have the more reactive brain, the finely tuned nervous system. But our culture has developed in such a way to try to shut that down, because it is not what is valued, and it's not what can be valued when you're such a young society. So where might you find pockets of older, connected to indigenous roots? A place that I have found it is in African-American churches.
Oh, wow. Say more about that.
I have danced a lot. I'm a little white girl from Oklahoma, but I have some Southern culture. And in my work, I have worked a lot in African-American communities, which has made me and helped me to do some of my anti-racism work and my cultural competency work, which led me to have some very good friends who are also African-American. And I love African-American church. I really probably wouldn't identify so much as a Christian, but I love going to Black churches. And what you can see in more traditional Black churches is a lot of emotional expression, a lot of passion and feeling. And it comes from a more connectedness to the indigenous culture, despite how hard slavery was. In fact, I believe that really difficult immigrant journey, that forced immigrant journey, caused the opposite of what sort of the dominant culture immigrant journey caused. I believe that I've noticed in a lot of African-American families that I've worked with, that I've been friends with in churches, that there is a stronger spiritual identity and a stronger clinging to the old ways, to what your ancestors taught you. And I don't know about you, Adam, and I know Jung says we need to do this work. I have really not done the work of finding the indigenous roots of my ancestors, right? And I think many white people living in the US haven't. Lots of other ethnicities haven't as well. But in strong cultural family identity, I find it more likely that people have contacted those indigenous roots. So now, what about countries or groups who are more actively in contact with their indigenous roots, where there was a connectedness to the land, to nature, to spirituality? It was Native American tribes who brought the concept forth of 7 generations, that all of our actions today will be thinking about them. How will they impact the 7th generation from now? That was an HSP. That was a person who was thinking and deep processing. Now, why did that become a defining characteristic of certain indigenous cultures in this country? Because more indigenous cultures value the highly sensitive person, the wise thinker, the person who's taking the time to really process deeply, to use their emotional leadership. So really, it's not because indigenous people have more highly sensitive people or more highly sensitive or anything like that. It's just simply that their values are different.
That's so beautiful. And it dovetails nicely with my own experience of having been in 4 South African nations recently, where I saw a great reverence for the macrocosm that surrounded the people who lived in it, the appreciation of nature, the appreciation of ancestry. And I'm thinking about my time in Japan, same thing. I've lived there for 3 years, and I did see a lot of that type of HSP-like presence and a real valuing of the introspective, a real valuing of ancestry in a way that is so beautiful. And the way you just said, thinking 7 generations forward, we won't be here, but maybe we leave this good for them because it's the right thing to do. And I'm also just thinking about how hard it can be to be an HSP in a world that doesn't necessarily value or celebrate that trait. What are some of your favorite self-care ideas for someone who might identify as an HSP?
And living in this world.
Exactly.
I have a love-hate relationship with my trait. I say that none of us were expecting to have to be gifted in this way. Our parents weren't expecting to have gifted children. I'm putting gifted in air quotes so you can't see it as you're listening to this recording, but I want to tell you what those air quotes are. Giftedness in psychology and education means a high IQ above a certain level. Many HSPs do have high IQs, but it's not correlated in any way. But I feel like there is an intellectual giftedness if you're thinking and processing that deeply about so many things. That is intellectual gift. And it's like, blessing and curse. So the reason it's hard, I'm going to say this, the reason I have a love-hate is because I'm also a high sensation seeker. I don't think I've said that yet. Another trait that also is in about 20% of humans, and it does have possibly some correlation with with high sensitivity, but we can basically say that they can coexist or not. It just means that I like to do a lot, right? It's like an extrovert. We haven't said this yet.
we went on the same wavelength, 100%.
30% of highly sensitive people are extroverted.
Yep.
Not me, but I'm in the 70%. But if you're extroverted or you're a high sensation seeker, you don't want to slow down because frankly, that's the self-care. Another study that came out in the late 2010s found that the brains of sensory processing sensitivity, that highly reactive brain that we have, keep working even at rest.
Working even at rest.
That's terrible. They put functional MRIs studies going, they have functional MRI imaging going on. And then even when you're meditating or sleeping, your brain's still working a lot longer than people without this brain. That sucks.
It sucks.
Because you need so much more time to get that rest. And okay, look, I already mentioned the shaman's hut. And it's one of my favorite expressions for HSPs. We were designed to be living in the hut, half a mile from the village, on the other side of the creek. Most of our time is to ourselves. Our basic needs are taken care of. The village brings us our food and clothing so that we can be contemplative and be ready for our emotional leadership and our great advising and healing that we do and our creativity and whatever, all those different things that brain makes you better at. And so living in this world, how do you do it? So there's the big answer. The big answer is do less. And it's not optional. Do less, sleep more. Now, let's do some little answers so that I want people to feel like there's a few things you can do today.
Yep.
That will help. So if you've seen me anywhere, if you've seen my talk at Google, you know this is the most important one, which is to close your eyes. The eyes let in 80% of the stimulation, 80%. So even closing your eyes for 30 seconds it's like a nap for a regular person. And there is all this research on how our brains are more active when we're doing visual scanning. And I don't know about you, but I'm never not visual scanning. I'm always taking in all the details to everything around me. And that's one of the reasons, because our brains are more active around the visual scanning. So close your eyes frequently. Do the habit training. We all know this from the research around developing habits for anything, weight loss, exercise, whatever. Associate closing your eyes with something. Like every time you take a drink of your coffee or your tea, close your eyes. Every time you touch your car keys, close your eyes. 10 seconds. It's such a simple thing. So start to integrate that into your life. Water is another really, really great way. People know that my happy place is Lemantor Beach in Point Reyes National Seashore, but any beach will do. The waves are so healing and soothing and cleansing to me. So there's the mental aspect, or I could stand in a creek all day and come out a new person. But also, my friends, just go to the bathroom. You can always have the excuse to go, whether you're at work or you're a young person at school, or you're in the middle of a podcast interview. If you have to go to the bathroom, you have to go to the bathroom. It's socially acceptable. So what do you do when you get there? Wash your hands and face with cold water. It's a reset. It's amazing. And then, of course, drinking water. It's another great way, but I'll just also, every time you pick up your water bottle or your coffee cup or whatever it is, make that first sip a mindful drink where you actually go slow enough. You notice that you're drinking. I can drink. I'm not a mindful eater or drinker. If I have a treat, like my son will never share a chocolate shake with me, because if he doesn't hog it, he's going to get it. I'm going to get it all because I don't even notice I'm drinking it. If it's sugar, it's gone. So it's been a big intervention for me. Maybe everybody savors that first sip, even of water, and feel it in your mouth. You don't feel it going down. So those are some really simple little pieces that you can do to bring yourself out of the whirlwind hamster wheel world that you're living in. I have an intervention. I'm putting together a course now. It's called 100 Tools for Thriving as a Sensitive Person. And I've already have the 100 tools. So I'll give you one of them right now. One of them is, it's called Lean Back to Lean In. Now, as people who are really engaged and going deep in our interactions and any content, we tend to lean in. And Adam and I are talking on Zoom right now. And I find myself, I keep leaning toward the camera because I'm engaged and I want to connect. Like that's how a sensitive brain works. But in fact, if you're talking to a sensitive person, this helps them as well as you. The more we lean back away from the camera, away from the intensity of the interaction, the more we can relax into it and have a healthy perspective. So I really encourage every sensitive person out there, and every person who talks to a sensitive person, trust me, you are talking to sensitive people, even if you're not one, because at 1 in 5 or maybe 1 in 4, we're everywhere. So just lean back. If you notice tension in your own body or face or voice, you find you're holding your breath a little bit, you're heating up. I heat up. I mean, the least bit of anxiety. We were talking about my talk at Google, and it's gotten a lot of views, and I pulled it together. But somewhere in the comments, somebody was insulting me in the comments, and I used to read all the comments and respond to them. And they said something about how I kept looking down or something at the teleprompter, which was just my slides, no speech or anything. I put in the comment and I said, I was having an anxiety attack the entire time. So the fact that it happened is a miracle. So, when we're under stress, overwhelm starts to come up, and it can turn into anxiety. And that feeling, everybody has a different first signal. Do you know what your first signal is, Adam, when you start to feel overwhelmed or over aroused?
That's a great question. I think that my eyes actually start to feel like salt water has entered them. It's like there's a stinginess in my eyes. That's probably thing one. There's probably a sweat that also happens, that I sweat a bit because my system's like so overworked. Those are the two that come to my mind. They're physiological in nature. but the need to take a nap, like I just got to take a nap.
I mean, if you start to find yourself checking out in the conversation or in the environment, like looking out the window, which is what I'm doing right now, that might be a sign. My two that are kind of funny, but very accurate when I know I'm starting to spin out is when I start dropping profanity. I mean, I swear a lot. I'm not like a nice girl. I mean, I am a nice girl, but I have a potty mouth because there was no swearing allowed in my upbringing.
That's two of us.
So if I start swearing or flipping the bird at people in the car or whatever, I know they're getting over aroused. And the other one is I cannot bear my bra.
Interesting.
Like,
sensory.
It just starts itching. And kids talk about this all the time too. Like the clothes start bothering them.
For sure.
And, like it's something you can normally wear.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like,
I'm going to burn it publicly.
That's when I know that I'm starting to feel over aroused. Because mostly, let me just say, sensitive people are probably the people who started creating shirts with no tags.
Thank God.
And I found for my son the perfect underwear when he was a kid. It was organic cotton and loose knit boxers. And the fabric went all the way around the elastic. So the elastic didn't touch his skin, right?
Yes.
And then he learned, he made this up himself because he was taking care of himself, that he always sagged his pants just a little bit so that the underwear was above the waistband of the pants. So he didn't have to feel the waistband of the pants touching his skin. So we come up with these things. But so then you get your way of dressing, the socks that work for you. And then one day your socks are driving you bonkers. You're probably getting over aroused. So I've spent my entire adult life in Alane, which is a 12-step program for families and friends of alcoholics. And it's my bias. I think every American qualifies for Alane. Like nobody doesn't know somebody with a drinking problem in this country. That's not scientifically proven. That's just my clinical and personal experience. But one of the most important premises of the Alane program is sort of a cognitive behavioral therapy tool. And it's called awareness, acceptance, action. It's the 3 A's. And this is something that we can all practice and act on immediately in our lives. Awareness is the first key. You can't change anything that you're not aware of. So if you're just spinning out like all clothes drive me bonkers, or I can't be in this situation, I'm having a meltdown, which is what when overwhelm gets too bad, over arousal gets too bad, it results in a meltdown, whatever that looks like for you. So being aware that you're starting to go there. That's why I've worked a lot with clients on how do you know when it's starting? That's why I know about the clothes. And that's why I know about the swear words. Somebody said that was theirs. I'm like, oh, I do. So the awareness is key. Noticing when is it too much for you? Because most of us just keep going until we're so far gone that you can't do anything about over arousal once you're gone. You just have to wait till it's fixed. So once you know what those signals are, then you accept it. And this is the hard thing, at least for me. I don't want to accept that I can't stay in IKEA longer or be at this event or do whatever it is, or that I need to take a break or go rest. It just ticks me off because I remember I'm high sensation seeking. I just want to go, go, go. So the acceptance has to be deep. And that's the first of the highly sensitive person's 5 to thrive, is to know awareness, to know you have the trait, and to accept that it is who you are, that this is how your brain works. Nobody wants to be neurodiverse until you do a lot of work to come to accept it. And sensitivity, high sensitivity is one kind of neurodiversity. Once you've accepted it, then you can take action. And the action is to prevent it in the first place.
That is so helpful for me to hear. And everything you're saying has been landing like a sack of sugar falling to the ground, like thud. First off, animals. I learned how to take care of myself by having a cat in my life. I used to hate cats until I fell in love with a cat and I never turned back. But cats really understand intuitively how to be comfortable, how to take care of themselves, when to nap. And I was go, 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 go. I was raised as a go, 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 go person. And one of the ways my wife tells me she loves me is by saying, sweetie, you deserve to relax. Those are like the magic words from her because I'm so oriented to go, go, go. And if I had two animals that described me, it would be the monkey and the dolphin. As it turns out, monkey mind, yes, 100%. And the dolphin, apparently, when it comes to sleeping, the chronotype of a dolphin is always half awake, even while sleeping.
Okay.
And that's me, unfortunately, to a T, according to Michael Bruce's work on chronotypes and sleep and the types of mammals that I mimic when I sleep. Unfortunately, it's the dolphin, which sucks. So to your point, it never really, really gets turned off. And if I ever had a tattoo, which I don't, it would be, I've always dreamt of having a tattoo of like a monkey riding a dolphin. Now, I know that's not exactly kind for the dolphin, but those are the two animals that really, those are my totems.
But not your spirit animals, because your spirit animal is the one who teaches you the new way.
So it would be the cat, I guess, in that case.
I guess, yeah.
The cat has been has been my spirit animal. I've always thought of a spirit animal, probably used it as a misnomer, but as something that represents me. But I like that idea of my spirit animal being a cat. Yeah, cats have definitely been my teachers.
Such amazing healers, too. There are some cats who are just fiercely independent. You'll never see them. But then there are those cats who just come and lay on your chest
That's my guy.
When you're feeling down or not 100%. And, maybe they just want to warm up, but I feel like they run energy on us. And
100%.
We have 2 new cats up at my therapy barn. So now I'm saying we have therapy horses, we have a therapy dog, and now we have therapy kittens because these cats are all over the people. It's so funny.
100%. We have a therapy dog at home who actually serves in my office and my wife's office right now. And always identified as a dog person. But, a newer element to my life has been becoming a cat person. And boy, if you ask me which animal I like better, I would not be able to answer. I love them both pretty much equally, but differently. They're so great. But for me as an HSP, really the idea of learning that I could opt out, the idea of learning that I can say no has been so important. I love that you use extroverting and introverting as verbs. I am an ambivert, as it turns out. I didn't realize this until I was older because I never gave the introverted part of myself any time to get to know, oh, there's something here. So it's been really important for my own evolution. Let's talk a little bit more about monkey mind and sensory processing. I feel like I have a gas guzzling machine in my brain and it's just like, it gets so tired from monkey minding all the time. And you were describing was me to a T in terms of just like, I can't seem to turn it off. And I love the idea of taking a breather, drinking a glass of water, putting hands over my eyes. Let's talk about the monkey mindedness and just other ways that you found to just kind of dial it back.
One of the things you said made me think of this. What is good for highly sensitive people is good for all people. It might not be necessarily valued. Oh, I know what it was. We're talking about saying no. Ugh. And you can find books and podcasts and videos and courses on setting boundaries and saying no, because everybody needs it. But for a highly sensitive person, it's not optional. We cannot just go, go, go. I think of it as brain training, really. I mean, okay, I'm a therapist. Of course I do. But I think it's just so important. I always say great parents teach children how to moderate and modulate their lives. They don't overbook. They have strict rules about bedtime and screen use, and and diet, nutrition. There's a lot of structure in good parenting. About you, but I live a long ways from my parents. I still have them blessedly, but I live a long ways away from them, and they're not in charge of me anymore. So I have no choice but to be my own parent. And I think of it as parenting my brain, because my brain just goes whacked out, but just overdoing or overthinking or over feeling. It comes by it honestly. It's designed to do that, but I have to set the limit with my own brain. And that takes a lot of work. I think one of the best tools is a regular meditation practice. Mm-hmm. But what's really trendy and most taught right now is mindfulness meditation, which happens to be really challenging and maybe not very helpful for highly sensitive people. Let me give a caveat, a disclaimer here. If you are highly sensitive and you practice mindfulness meditation, please keep doing it if it's working for you. If it's an exercise in frustration and failure, as it is for many highly sensitive people, I'd like to say to you, that's normal. That's right. Because our brain is supposed to keep thinking. Do you know one of the forms of Tibetan meditation, and one of my favorite books for teaching spirituality or exploring spirituality is the Book of Joy, which is by the memoirist of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And it's an interview, video recorded. So it's verbatim quotes from the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu in conversation with each other. And it's lovely. One of the things that the Dalai Lama says in there and says often, is one style of meditation is called analytical meditation. And that's where you take a thought issue, something you're trying to figure out in your life. You could do analytical meditation on the meaning of life or on the meaning of death, something like that. But you could also do it on your relationship with your adult child. That's just something I might use. So you can do analytical meditation, anything. So you take something that you'd like to think more about and you quiet yourself down and really focus on it and actually think about that topic on purpose. Well, this is a parenting intervention and a therapeutic intervention that I do with youth around temperament. Again, the youth we're talking about now is your brain. You adult HSPs, we're talking about your brain. But let's put it on a kid. It's a little easier to see that way. You pick your kid up from school and they say, school sucks. Yep. I hate school, right? And the normal response to that in our culture is, oh, your school's awesome. It's not that bad. You have friends. You're on the mountain biking team. You're in rock band, even though you play violin. Like your school is amazing. You're on financial. It's brilliant.
Let me sell you on this.
Yeah, there's something to like. What happens to that kid? He goes, she really didn't hear me.
Exactly.
And she doesn't value my experience or my feelings. And so that's where we go wrong in meditation. Those thoughts come up from our kid brain and we say, not now. You're thinking, honey, stop thinking. That's not how you meditate. And so then those thoughts, remember, our brains keep going even when we're meditating because we're HSPs. So then your thoughts, they have to get stronger. Now, there's other meditation teaching, transcendental meditation, which is what Alane and Aaron have been doing for 50 years.
That's the one that's worked for me too.
I've been trained in it. And the thing I like most about it, I'm not saying anybody has to or should go get trained in TM. Right. You can explore it. But here's the training piece that made a huge difference for me. And I have a personal coach in this because I'm friends with Alane, Aaron. So I have an extra advantage. I've really explored this with her. In TM, they say that the more you think, the better your meditation is because thinking rises the thoughts to the top and it releases stress. So thinking in meditation is good. It's how you release the stress. So I'm just trying to reframe it for everybody. Now, a lot of HSPs love guided meditation. I do love the mantra. It really does help me because I have a few mantras. One of my favorite mantras is the Serenity Prayer from the 12-step programs. And now cognitive behavioral psychology has taken it and made it the Serenity Creed. So you don't have to have any kind of religion to appreciate it. And I'll just say it out loud. If you would like to close your eyes, listeners, while I say this and just see how it lands with you.
And listener, just to let you know, I'm doing it right now. And obviously don't do this if you're driving, but definitely I'm going to benefit from you right now.
And if you're driving, you can use a soft gaze and get the same impact. So here we go. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So you can find that anywhere on the internet, write it out, memorize it. And when I'm having a hard time, I just say it over and over again, even if I'm not paying attention to the words. Now, the interpretation, the trick I learned from being at big, huge 12-step conventions, Alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the way they do this in big conventions. Everybody says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And then the whole 6,000 people yell, you, right? What I can't change is you. The courage to change the things I can. And then 6,000 people yell, me. Mm-hmm. And then the wisdom to know the difference. So it's just very simply, I can't change you. I can change me. That's the wisdom. And I use it again, like a mantra. Another mantra that I use that I can just put on, it's a chant, a song that you can buy on the internet for $1.99 by Eve Decker. And you can find many of these free chants of loving kindness. Loving kindness is a blessing, meditation, a chant. But when you put it, Eve has a beautiful voice and she's a meditation teacher as well. And she's changed the language to language that works for her. And the song is called May We. And it's about 10 minutes long. And I play it at the beginning of every masterclass I ever teach. And when I'm having a hard time, sometimes I might just put that on in the background. It's my ringtone on my phone.
Wow.
So using things like this, find what works for you and use it to help bring you back to you. And that's meditation.
Could not agree more. One of the things that I feel so grateful to you about is that you have actually tweaked the terms of the highly sensitive person. And we kind of talked about this at the beginning of the interview, that it was kind of unfortunate that the term highly sensitive is being used just because there are so many negative judgments associated with that term. And I myself, when I first heard it, and I mentioned it earlier, I was like, oh God, please give me a break. I
felt the same way.
Yeah, it's like, now there's this as a thing. And until I started reading Elaine Aaron's work, and I was like, oh my gosh, not only is it a thing, but it's me for sure. and you've beautifully articulated as a finely tuned nervous system.
Yes. And this came out of a conversation with the International Consultants on High Sensitivity, of which I'm one. These are folks who are professionals in the world of working with highly sensitive people and have been mentored and trained by Alane. And you can find them on her as recommended speakers on her website, hsperson.com. Okay. So finely tuned nervous system, everybody can relate to that. There's so much in the literature and in the cosmos now about nervous system regulation, self-regulation, co-regulation. Nervous system is something everyone now has. I feel like the vast majority of people now have an idea of what a nervous system, what that means. And ours is finely tuned. If you say that to your medical professional or to your kid's teacher or even to your supervisor at work, they might actually be able to relate to it. Like, I am finely tuned. It's lovely, right? It's like a Jaguar. There's nothing negative about having a finely tuned nervous system. Actually, there's nothing negative about being highly sensitive except for our culture.
I have Italian engineering. I have a Ferrari. And I love that idea because when I drink coffee, I really taste the coffee. And I notice that some people like coffee. And they're like, yeah, it's good. But when I'm really, really with something that is delicious, I'm absolutely an enthusiast. I mean, like, it's like I have a super sensor inside of me. It's like, I really taste it. Yeah. And I'm tripping out hardcore. My kids started making fun of me yesterday. And one of the things I do is like, this is the best thing I've ever tried in my life. So I have a very finely tuned nervous system. I think about my poor mother, who has always been the one who noticed, like, she was way ahead of the curve. She was into recycling. She was into vegetables too. And she was into organic produce way before it was a thing. She was into the environment and caring about these things. And she's always been thinking about the seventh generation. And she's always been thinking about like the greater good. And it's not been an easy ride for her. And I think it can be really burdensome to have that highly tuned nervous system. And it can be wonderful. Now let's talk about couples. How can a neurotypical partner, say a dandelion partner who's married to an orchid, what would be some tips that you would encourage the so-called neurotypical with a finely tuned nervous system to partner? What would be your advice?
When you're telling the story about your mom, you reminded me of some other language, which is emotional leadership. And I've mentioned it, I think, already a couple times in this conversation, but that is something that we talk about. Highly sensitive people, emotional leaders. They have the feelings first. It doesn't mean they're the only ones who are having them, or the emotional reaction, we'll say. I like to avoid the F word, feelings. I don't avoid the other F word very much, but I definitely avoid the feelings word as much as possible because it also has stigma. So emotional leadership, if we look at the couple and we say, the sensitive one has emotional leadership. So he's the one, since we're talking about you, he's the one who is going to notice more and more quickly, who's going to be really thinking about all that noticing and then having an emotional reaction to it. It's not always convenient. It takes a lot more time. But if we think of it as emotional leadership, and if your wife can say, it's emotional leadership, maybe don't have the capacity to wait for him to do it right now. And I really don't want to hear about it right now because I'm just trying to get everybody out the door, whatever it is. But we frame it in that way instead of just that you're being annoying.
Recognize it as a leadership quality rather than just...
Yeah, I mean, it's a gift to your family, right? You're the one who kept the family alive when the fire was 3 miles away. You smelled it. And in fact, we both live in the Bay Area where we're often inundated with smoke from wildfires.
Right.
And, it's probably the sensitive people who first smell it and put their mask on to protect their health. Because now we know that the smoke from fires is just like any secondhand smoke and can have seriously deleterious effects on long-term health. It's really important for couples that the sensitive person have a conversation with their partner, whether they're sensitive or not, to say, I need to take time to get back to my optimal level of arousal when things get worked up for me. And I will be back. This is also from Gottman couples work that, first of all, you cannot have any interactions when your heart rate is elevated. That means when you're over aroused or overwhelmed. You can't learn anything. You can't change anything. So you have to take a break. But you don't just walk out the door and slam it the way most of us do when we're overwhelmed, right?
Screw you, I'm out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and like, yes, this happens in our family, that's marriage, right? But that you have to have good relationship hygiene. So what that means is you have to say, I'm going there, back to awareness, acceptance, action. I'm starting to feel, I have my heart rate monitor on. I have my smartwatch. My heart rate's going up and I need to take a break. Can we come back to this in 2 hours? And then I promise I will text you or be back in 2 hours and be in touch and keep doing it. And this might be, I can come back into the house and participate in the family, but I can't have this conversation. I might need 3 days, but I will be back, because otherwise it's abandonment and it's really nasty, not effective attachment. Another piece I want to say about couples is that you need more buffer time between events. Say you're at work seeing clients or doing an event or something. You can't just drive home through traffic, walk in the front door and start with dinner and the kids. It just doesn't work for a sensitive brain. It's not healthy for anyone. Remember, this is emotional leadership, but for sure, you can't do it if you're highly sensitive. You have to schedule in a buffer. You have to pull over on the side of the mountain and get out and close your eyes and be in nature or whatever it is. My favorite thing is to put the seat back in my car, roll down the window, stick my feet out the window so they're elevated, and close my eyes for 10 minutes. You have to schedule in buffers. And at the same time, if your partner has been home with the kids, regardless of who the sensitive one is, your partner's been home with the kids all day, they're dying for you to come home and get involved. They're pulling their hair out. They're over it. They need a break. So you can't have sort of battling breaks. There has to be room for everybody's breaks. May I say one more thing about this?
I love that so much. Keep going. Yes.
Good relationship couple hygiene is also about having mental illness treated. It is irresponsible and poor couple behavior to have mental illness and not seek treatment. Now, why do I say this when we're having a conversation about highly sensitive people? Because it's not a mental illness at all. I say it because of differential susceptibility. The research is clear in animals and humans that good, solid childhood environments with low stress cause highly sensitive people to have less illness, less mental illness, fewer injuries. They thrive so much better. But stressful childhood environments have the opposite effect. Yep. They cause a highly sensitive person to be more likely to struggle, especially with depression or anxiety. So HSPs, if you grew up in a stressful environment, I've only met one. I've been doing this work for decades. I've only met one HSP who had a good childhood. And if your current environment is stressful, it also impacts our mental health way more than people who don't have the trait. So if you are challenged by depression and or anxiety, and most other mental illnesses are occurring at a very small rate, just like in the regular population. But these two are more challenging for sensitive people who had stressful childhoods, especially. So if depression or anxiety is in your marriage, get treatment. I'm not going to say what is outside the scope of this conversation to recommend the treatment, but start with your primary care doc and be sure you weave in a mental health provider and find what works for you. It's very, very important if you're highly sensitive and you're seeking mental health treatment or medical treatment that you identify your more reactive brain and your more sensitive body to the healthcare provider. And guess what? I was just responding to a comment on social media this morning. Somebody had pneumonia and he's allergic to antibiotics, but he has to take them. And he's having all these symptoms. And his doctor he feels like his doctor doesn't care. And the bottom line of that is it sucks to have to advocate for yourself when you're ill and you need help, whether it's mental illness or physical illness, but you do. So you might need to take your partner with you.
Be willing to be a squeaky wheel and be willing to have an advocate with you, which I think is brilliant. I'm thinking about a lot of things as you're kind of unpacking these realities. One of which is there are we're talking to optimal levels of anxiety, and we can't take in new information. We can't think at our best. We choke, and we do need a little bit of arousal to be engaged, but we need the right amount. And I'm thinking also, as you're describing, really attending to ourselves during transitions of the great Mr. Rogers. He would always take off his shoes and take off his sweater and then put on a new pair of shoes and a new pair of sweaters. A new sweater. I think he was really speaking to the highly sensitive person around transitions. And 100%. You said that it's good. What's good for the HSPs is good for all. And then I also think about this burgeoning research that has come out on ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and how
much worse they can be for an HSP and how they morph into mental illness in various capacities later in life. And doesn't mean we can't be stronger on the other end, but we do need to deal with it. We will be walking around with rocks in our shoes, get those rocks out as much as possible. And so we can walk around as highly functional HSPs through life. I think this has really been useful. Alane, is there anything I should have asked but haven't yet asked?
Talking about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, is exactly the same research as differential susceptibility. So let me just say to everyone out there, yes, we are more impacted by adverse childhood experiences, but guess what? The good news is huge. We are more impacted by intervention. Wow. So whether you're closing your eyes for 10 seconds,
so true.
Whether you're using a mantra, whether you're taking breaks and slowing your transitions down and taking some of the pressure off of yourself, or maybe you're going to yoga, or you're meditating, or you're exercising, or you've leaned into your religion, no matter what it is you do, or you're getting mental health treatment. Highly sensitive people, our reactive brains respond better. Elaine Aron makes a joke. She thinks therapy might just be wasted on people who don't have this trait because it impacts them so little. And I'm not saying if you think you're not highly sensitive and you think you have a mental illness, by all means, get help. But if you're highly sensitive and you have something that's not quite right in your life, if you get help, you are going to respond massively to the help. Every little thing you do impacts you greatly. Now, I hear from people all the time who say, I do everything right. I exercise, I meditate, I eat protein, I do everything you're supposed to do, and I'm still feeling overwhelmed all the time, or I'm still depressed. And when I start to really, and so if this is you, listener, and you feel like you're doing a good job of you have self-care, by golly, because it's been popular for years and you're doing it. This is the difficult news. I have to tell you this truth. You're not doing enough. Truly, you are not doing enough. The definition of insanity is when you walk down, you do the same thing over and over again, and you expect different results.
Yes.
And if you keep walking down that same road and falling in that same hole over and over again, what you're doing is not what you need. So be creative, be adventuresome. Maybe you think you're not just because you're not high sensation seeking. You are. That's what your brain is. One of the other ways I talk about high sensitivity is we think more, we notice more, and we feel more. And if you're doing those things more, you probably have this trait, but also those are your tools that you need to think and notice and feel about what your interventions are.
That's
Go ahead.
Beautiful. And when you said not doing enough, I don't think you meant it in the sense of quantity, but you're not trying enough different things to see which one actually works. So you're saying, go out of your box, try something else and try something else.
I do want to say though, when I say you're not doing enough, I am talking about two things in particular.
I'm all ears.
Exercise. We are not moving enough. I can guarantee you that if you're not a professional athlete, you're not moving enough.
Guilty.
And the science is clear. I mentioned to Adam when we were talking off camera that I've now on my third time of reading Built to Move by the Starrett. And they even talk about professional athletes because they're doing their thing, but they're not doing the other kinds of movement enough. So even professional athletes aren't moving enough. So for real, there's just no question that we're not doing enough. I almost nobody.
Get moving.
The other thing is sleep, which I use as a broader category of rest.
Yes.
Time away from everybody, getting offline, breaks. The guideline that Elaine Aron and I tell people is that 1 hour every day, 1 day every week, and 1 week every season, we need retreat. We need rest. We need complete disengagement. Okay, look, I'm not doing it. I spend a lot of time overwhelmed, but I know if I did, I would probably be living a much better life. So for those two things, folks, I don't mean you're not enough. By all means, I would never say that. But in terms of exercise and rest, I'm sure you're not doing enough.
Quantify that again. It was 1 hour a day, 1 week every season.
And 1 day a week. 1 hour a day, 1 day a week. Look, every major religion in the world puts Sabbath in there.
That's right.
And, like conservative Jewish families and religions and congregations, they don't even get in their car. They live within walking distance of their temple. And on the Sabbath, they don't drive. They cook ahead of time and they don't even cook on their Sabbath. Been part of a family that had Hasidic Jews in it. So I know a little bit about living this lifestyle. And they cook all the cooked food ahead of time. So they don't even have to cook during the Sabbath. It's 24 hours of not doing work, whatever that means for you. And I'm sorry, scrolling through Instagram or TikTok is work.
Yeah, it's really taxing on the brain and incurs FOMO, social comparison, a whole host of negative characteristics that we don't need, and really encourage people to limit that to a particular amount per day. I think about it as almost a gluten sensitivity that everybody has a different amount of. It's kind of a sliding scale. Wow. This has been so much fun, and I've been so looking forward to it. And I'm going to ask you my final question, and I can't wait to hear what you say. So, Alane, if you somehow had the magical skills to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill that would dramatically improve the lives of individuals and perhaps society at large, what would that insight or skill be? And how do you imagine it would impact individuals as well as possibly society?
I will encapsulate it in one word and then unpack it just a smidge. Authenticity. I just feel like if we were all who we really are and we were transparent about it, that it would change the world. One of my personal heroes is Harvey Milk. He was the first openly gay elected official in the US, maybe anywhere. And his soapbox was come out. If every gay person in the world told people they were gay instead of keeping it a secret, then no one would have any stigma around gay people. It would just, everybody knows people, right? It's maybe a similar percentage to HSPs. So whenever you have some way that you are unique or diverse, separate, individual, different from your community or your family, if we were just our authentic selves and we talked about it, then there would be no stigma. Everybody would know highly sensitive people. Everybody would know people with learning differences. Everybody would know people with, I don't know, who are mixed race. Everybody would know. And so there would be no, I think diversity would be absolutely embraced in the world. You know, my son, a sensitive kid, when he was a young teen, he said that his vision was that there would be no different races in the future, that we would be all so intermingled, and that we would all, like he is a mutt, that we would all be mutts, that we would all value, people would be so unique, every single individual person, like not just gender. Now we say there are as many genders as there are humans in the world. There are as many ways to be sensitive as there are highly sensitive people in the world. And his vision was that there would be as many ethnicities as there were people in the world, because we would all be so intermingled and mixed. And then we would all be our authentic selves.
Love that so much, Alane. Well, I'm so glad to have had this time with you, and that you've been able to share your wisdom with my listeners. What you're doing is so important, Alane. And I hope that all 1.6 billion of us HSPs on the planet begin to have access to your lessons about us, and that we can be comforted and empowered by our authentic selves. And I'm just delighted to have had this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Adam. And thank you for being part of my mission and getting the word out.
You betcha. So how was this for you?
Great. I love the conversation. Thank you so much.
Loved it too.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe